Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Lundi, j'ai eu la chance de rencontrer des gens incroyables aux premières lignes de la campagne de vaccination de masse à Montréal. Que ce soit des pharmaciens qui conservaient les doses à la bonne température ou les infirmières qui administraient les vaccins, c'était remarquable de voir tout le monde travailler en équipe. L'organisation au centre de vaccination était impressionnante et ensemble, on va faire en sorte que le plus de gens possible soient protégés le plus rapidement possible. Vaccines are the path out of this pandemic. And that's why securing doses and getting them to the front lines is my #1 priority. Yesterday, you may have heard that the White House is talking about sending Canada 1.5 million doses of AstraZeneca. We're finalizing an agreement with this, on this with the American administration as we speak. This is something that Minister Anand and I have raised a number of times with the President and his team. We're working closely and very well with the Biden administration on many fronts, including vaccines. I want to thank President Biden for his collaboration. Canada and the US are each other's closest friends and most important allies. And I know we'll continue working to keep Canadians and Americans safe, beat this virus, and rebuild strong, thriving economies together. Tout vaccin approuvé.
Any vaccine approved in Canada is safe, and you can receive it with confidence. This is true of the AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, and Janssen vaccines. Yesterday, Health Canada participated in a meeting of the European Medicines Agency, where it was confirmed that the AstraZeneca vaccine is safe and effective. The best vaccine for you is the first vaccine that is offered to you. These vaccines will help you stay safe and will protect you and your loved ones.
We've already delivered over 4.7 million vaccine doses to the provinces and territories. And this week, we got more good news about shipments from Pfizer. Last Friday, I said that we would have 1 million new Pfizer doses every 7 days between March 22nd and early May. Well, yesterday, we confirmed that we will continue to receive over 1 million doses a week through to the end of May. Everyone who wants to will be fully vaccinated by the end of September, as we've been saying for months. Yesterday, we also approved the deployment of the Canadian Armed Forces to northern Manitoba in order to help roll out vaccines in First Nations communities that are otherwise hard to reach. This is about working in partnership with First Nations on their efforts to get as many people vaccinated as soon as possible. The Armed Forces are currently doing detailed planning of the deployment for up to 23 communities in northern Manitoba. Again, I want to thank all of our members of the Armed Forces who step up time and time again to keep Canadians safe. Pour mettre fin à la pandémie, pour rebâtir.
In order to end the pandemic and rebuild from the global economic crisis, we all need to work together. Yesterday, I spoke with the Director General of the International Monetary Fund, Kristalina Georgieva, concerning the international economic recovery. We need to rebuild, and we need to do so in a way that benefits everyone, including and especially the most vulnerable. Director General Georgieva and myself discussed the IMF's international report, which underscores the positive and concrete effects of our actions to support Canadians through this crisis. On Wednesday, I also spoke with Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi. Our two countries are long-standing partners, united by our populations and our values. Canada enthusiastically welcomes Italy's leadership as it assumes the G20 presidency this year. The Italian Prime Minister and myself discussed, among other things, measures to allow families and businesses to get through these challenging times. Of course, we also talked about the importance of vaccination in order to ensure the safety of Canadians, Italians, and people around the world. Vaccines and programs like the Canada Recovery Benefit help people stay safe and healthy. But they also need a safe and affordable place to live. The last year has reminded us just how important it is to have a roof over your head. But for far too many people, this is not something that they can take for granted.
2015, we've made historic investments in housing from coast to coast to coast. And last year, when the pandemic hit hard, we knew that we had to do even more and faster. And that's why we invested $1 billion in the new Rapid Housing Initiative to quickly create homes right across the country. At the time, this investment was for 3,000 units. Well, earlier today, Minister Justin had some great news to share. We're not just going to meet our targets, we're going to exceed it. The Rapid Housing Initiative will now mean over 4,700 more homes, almost 40% of which will be for Indigenous people. This is about more than just a roof over someone's head. It's about hope. It's about a brighter future. Just take what an affordable home has meant for a single parent like Sabrina from Peterborough. Thanks to the local Habitat for Humanity condo development and the funding they received from the federal government, she's able to raise her kids in the good, safe place they deserve. Rebâtir après la pandémie.
Rebuilding after the pandemic means ensuring that everyone in Canada has the tools that they need to succeed. Our plan will help more families buy a house. It will help create 1 million jobs for workers of all ages. And our plan will allow all Canadians to rebuild better and stronger for a better future.
Finally, let me say a few words about Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. Michael Spavor's hearing took place earlier today. The court has not yet pronounced a verdict. Michael Kovrig's hearing is scheduled for Monday. Let me be very clear. Their arbitrary detention is completely unacceptable, as is the lack of transparency around these court proceedings. Our top priority remains securing their release. We will continue to work tirelessly to bring them home as soon as possible. I want to thank our many, many international partners, friends, and allies for their solidarity and support. Going forward, we will continue to be in close contact with the families during this difficult time. To their loved ones, know that today and every day, Canadians are with you and thinking of both Michaels. Merci beaucoup. Je passe maintenant la parole à la...
Thank you very much. I'll now pass it over to Minister Anand.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prime Minister, and thank you all for joining us. I would like to provide a brief overview of anticipated vaccine deliveries. As was discussed yesterday, and as the Prime Minister just mentioned, Canada and the United States are finalizing an agreement on an exchange of AstraZeneca doses that will see Canada receiving 1.5 million doses before the end of the month. We will continue to update Canadians as the details of this arrangement are finalized. Avec les livraisons prévues de Pfizer.
With the planned deliveries of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, we will be receiving a little bit less than 5 million doses of vaccines over the next 2 weeks, for a total of 9.5 million doses delivered by the end of the first quarter. Canada is on the right path to receive 36.5 million vaccination doses by the end of June and 118 million by the end of September.
Combined with our anticipated deliveries of Pfizer and Moderna, we will be receiving nearly 5 million doses of vaccines over the course of the next 2 weeks, for a total of 9.5 million doses delivered by the end of this month. Looking ahead, Canada is on track to receive a total of 36.5 million vaccines by the end of June and 118 million doses by the end of September. As continues to be the case, my team and I are constantly working with suppliers to accelerate the delivery of doses. That work is showing results, and the work is ongoing. The increasing size of the shipments that Canada is receiving means that at times, weekly allocations may be divided into multiple deliveries. Next week's shipment of Moderna is a prime example. Rather than waiting until the end of the week to ship the entire order of 846,000 doses at once, it was decided to expedite the portion of the order that is ready so that it arrives in Canada earlier. As we have said from the beginning, after an initial ramp-up phase, vaccine deliveries would significantly increase. And that is exactly what we are seeing now and will continue to see going forward. This equally applies to the vital supplies that our government is procuring for the provinces and territories in order to administer vaccines to Canadians. By the end of this week, we will have received 13 million low dead volume syringes that are key to ensuring the most efficient extraction of doses from each vial. Des dizaines de millions d'autres de ces
Tens of millions of these specialized syringes will be delivered over the coming weeks.
promise that there will be no further disruptions to global supply chains. But we do know that Canada's diverse portfolio of vaccines means that we are well positioned to weather future disruptions and to ensure that vaccines continue to arrive in Canada by the millions. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Megwedge.
Thank you, Minister. We'll now turn to questions from media over the phone. We'll start on the phone and then move back to the room. The ministers and the Prime Minister will be available for those questions. Operator, over to you.
Thank you. Merci. For questions, please press *1 on your device's keypad. Pour toute question, faites étoile 1 sur votre appareil. Première question, Mélanie Marquis.
Melanie Marquis from La Presse. Go ahead. Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. Survivors and loved ones of survivors of the Polytechnique massacre have questions about Bill C-21. They say that they will not agree to have you attend the annual memorial. How would you react to this? Answer. First of all, I want to thank and acknowledge the survivors of the Polytechnique massacre and all of those who continue to lobby for greater gun control in Canada. We have heard them and we stand with them. We will continue to work together with them. We have taken concrete measures to strengthen gun control in this country. Starting in last May, it is now illegal to buy, sell, or use assault rifles in Canada. And we will continue through our discussions around Bill C-21 and through parliamentary conversations to bring possible improvements to the bill. We will continue to introduce measures to allow cities to restrain or restrict the use of handguns within their municipalities. We will continue to bring forward more measures to limit the importation of handguns and munitions in Canada. And we will always do everything we can to control guns in Canada. And we want to thank all of the groups that continue to work on this issue.
I want to begin by thanking all the extraordinary advocacy groups like Police se souvient, who for many, many years have ensured that not only are the 14 women killed at l'École Polytechnique not forgotten, but that Canada continues to move forward on strengthening gun control. That's something that we've taken seriously as a government with strong measures during our first mandate, but also as of last spring, it is now illegal to buy, to sell, or to use assault weapons in this country. We're continuing to move forward with further legislation, including measures that limit importation of ammunition across our border, strengthen border measures, give municipalities more tools to ban handguns, and other things that are going to keep Canadians safe. And I look forward to the parliamentary hearings on that bill to make sure that we're doing everything we can. But as always, I continue to stand with survivors and families of victims of violence against women, of gender-based violence, and we will always work together.
Ministre Vimel?
Oui, vous avez
Yes. You talked about potential improvements to Bill C-21. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? For example, is the government considering bringing amendments to the bill? Answer. This bill was based on in-depth study of our situation in Canada and things that worked well in other countries around the world, including New Zealand, which moved forward with a handgun ban as well. We are looking to find ways to keep people safe, and we are confident that our approach is the right one. But we're always open to listening to testimony that may suggest possible improvements.
Merci. Prochaine question. Operator?
Thank you. Merci. La prochaine question, l'inaudible.
The next question is from La Presse Canadienne. Question. Yes. Now, I'd like to ask Minister Anand to clarify. Now, the U.S. is sending us AstraZeneca vaccines, and I'm wondering what the expiration date would be for those. And Mr. Trudeau, we're receiving 1.5 million vaccines that we weren't expecting from the U.S. Does this make you have any further reflection on the COVAX situation and the poorer countries who are even more disadvantaged than Canada when it comes to getting vaccines? Answer from the Prime Minister. Our priority is always to vaccinate as many people as possible, obviously starting with seniors, Indigenous peoples, and the most vulnerable people across the country, including frontline essential workers. We have a lot of work to do to get to all of those people. It will help that we are getting more doses, but our priority is to get vulnerable Canadians vaccinated as quickly as possible. And I'll give the floor to Minister Anand to give you more details about the U.S. delivery. Anita. Thank you very much, Prime Minister. We are currently working out the logistical details of this. We will be informing Canadians as soon as those details are worked out. But I can tell you now that the shelf life of these vaccines is at least 60 days. I will have more details to share with Canadians in the coming days. Thank you.
In English, Minister?
We are finalizing the details of the arrangement with the United States at the current time. In terms of the expiration date, the doses will have a minimum shelf life of 60 days. But as I said, we are finalizing those details, and I will share them with Canadians as soon as we have them. Thank you.
Ministre Vimel?
oui,
Yes, a follow-up question for Minister Anand. You said 60 days from the time of manufacture or 60 days from the time they arrive in Canada? And Mr. Trudeau, we've seen a big difference between the vaccine rollout in Ontario and Quebec. Mr. Ford continues to say that the problem is that the vaccines are not being delivered quickly enough and that they're being prorated. So how would you describe or explain the difference between the rollout in Ontario and Quebec? Answer from the Prime Minister. Well, first of all, our responsibility as the federal government is to help all of the provinces. And as you said, we are receiving millions of vaccines every week, and we are distributing them on a prorated basis across the country. I have seen myself what's happening in Quebec, and I think it's excellent. As I said, my mother is 72 years old and she received her vaccine last week. And I was able to meet with a lot of people who were very pleased with how things are being rolled out in Quebec. I've also seen that the vaccine rollout is ramping up in Ontario and across the country, and we will continue to be there to support the provinces as we increase the number of vaccines every day. As Minister Anand said, we will be receiving a huge number of vaccines, 5 million doses in the next few weeks, which will make a big difference all across the country, in Ontario and elsewhere. And we will continue to be there to support the provinces with their vaccination campaigns.
Oui, et peut-être je
Yes, and perhaps I'll just add something here as well, Prime Minister. These deliveries mean that, along with all of the other deliveries, Canada will be receiving a total of 9.5 vaccine doses in this quarter, so before the end of the month. Although there's still a lot of work to be done to ensure that all Canadians have access to vaccines, we have accelerated the delivery of 3.5 million vaccines. And also, when it comes to the dates for those doses, we think that it will be 60 days from the time they arrive in Canada. And it's important that any vaccine, regardless of its expiration date, should be stored properly. So we need to administer these doses, give them to Canadians as quickly as possible. That is the case for the AstraZeneca vaccines as well as the Pfizer and Moderna ones. Thank you very much.
Well, National, I wanted to ask you, the Chinese embassy released a statement today calling Canada hypocritical and arrogant. It says that Canada is distorting the facts and insists that China is, quote, a country with the rule of law. What's your response to that, as it appears there's an escalation in tone from the Chinese embassy?
Canada is a country of the rule of law. We move forward in full respect of that rule of law, and we move forward in full transparency. We have continually condemned not just the arbitrary detention of 2 Canadian citizens, but it is disappointing that the trial undergoing that Michael Spavor went through, and possibly the trial that Michael Kovrig will go through on Monday, is happening in secret, without transparency, without access by Canadian consular officials. Le Canada est un pays de la règle de droit.
Canada is a country of the rule of law, a country where our processes are transparent. And it's disappointing to see that not only did China use this arbitrary detention on 2 of our citizens, but also that this is happening in a very non-transparent way. Even consular representatives and diplomats were unable to attend the trial.
Follow up, I wanted to ask you, you continue to say that the multilateral approach with China is the right one. However, we've seen these 2 gentlemen, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, go to trial. So that's kind of evidence that that hasn't worked. So what kind of assurances can you give the families that your government can be trusted to get them home?
Over the past number of years, we have worked very closely, not just with the families, not just directly in diplomacy with China, but also very much with the international community, with our allies. We saw the tremendous support for a Canadian-led initiative against arbitrary detention move forward in the global community over the past number of months. We've also seen repeatedly allies and friends stand up for the rights of these Canadians who are arbitrarily detained in their own bilateral conversations with China. China needs to understand that it is not just about 2 Canadians. It is about the respect for the rule of law and relationships with a broad range of Western countries that is at play with the arbitrary detention and the coercive diplomacy they have engaged in. Depuis les débuts, nous avions...
From the beginning, we've worked with the families, with our partners, and directly with the Chinese government to underscore the fact that this arbitrary detention of the 2 Michaels is unacceptable. I want to thank all of the different countries around the world who supported our initiative against this arbitrary detention. And I also want to thank all of our allies who took a stand, even within their bilateral conversations with the Chinese government, in order to raise their concern with this situation. China needs to understand that their approach of coercive diplomacy is not working, and it will not be well received by other countries, and not just Canada.
Good afternoon, Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. The families of the victims who died on Flight 752 last January are asking your government to push Iran to release more information, including economic sanctions on the Revolutionary Guard, and considering taking the regime to the International Court of Justice. What will you say to the families about what your government's next steps will be?
As I've said from the very beginning to the families, including in heartbreaking conversations in the weeks that followed this terrible tragedy, was that we will continue to ensure that Iran is held to account for its actions, that there be truth and justice and full accountability to those who are responsible for this terrible, terrible tragedy. We've continued to work alongside partners in the international community who've called upon better accountability for Iran, but also changes to the way the international aviation community responds to incidents such as these. But first and foremost, we will continue to be there to support the families and fulfill our promise to find out exactly what went wrong, how this terrible tragedy could happen, and ensure that Iran wields full responsibility for its role in the loss of so many lives.
Prime Minister Tom Perry with CBC. There's been no verdict so far in the case of Michael Spavor, and I'm wondering what your interpretation of that is, what your diplomats in Beijing are telling you about that.
We have followed this case, obviously, from the very beginning. We've been there advocating for the release of Michael Spavor, Michael Kovrig from the very start. We've continued to work directly with the Chinese government. We've continued to rally allies who are concerned about this, not just because of these two Canadians, but because of the potential implications for their own citizens. This is something that we will continue to work extremely hard on. Canada is a country of the rule of law. We are a country of transparent judicial processes. We are a country that stands up for human rights, and we will continue to do exactly that. We know that the processes will continue to unfold on the Chinese side, but on our side, we will continue to advocate for the release of these two Michaels and an end to the arbitrary detention of these Canadians.
And have you received any assurance or indication from the Americans that they'll be raising the case of the two Michaels at Secretary Blinken's meeting with Chinese officials in Alaska?
We were very pleased to see among the diplomats who showed up at the hearing in Dandong that a number of our allied countries, including the United States, were represented to express our solidarity, our global solidarity in this case. And I can assure you that the United States continues to prioritize this case as it is something that is important not just to us, but to them in terms of respect for the rule of law and support of citizens from around the world. J'ai été encouragé.
I was heartened and touched to see the number of diplomats from different countries, including the U.S., who were there in Dandong for the trial. Even if they didn't have access to the trial itself, they were there to show solidarity with the two detained Canadians, and also to show their support for the principles of justice that need to be supported and upheld around the world. I know from our conversations, not only with President Biden, but also with Secretary Blinken, that the Americans take this issue seriously, not only out of friendship with Canada, but also out of support for the principles that need to be held up in their relationship with China.
Kristen Ashkate, CTV National News. In your own words, you talked about this a bit here, but do you believe Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor are getting a fair trial?
One of the challenges around the lack of transparency on that process is it becomes extremely difficult to make judgments around whether or not the trial was fair. I can certainly say that in Canada, we are a country of an independent justice system that values transparency as part of the process in terms of ensuring that justice is fair and done properly. I'm going to continue to advocate for the release of these two Michaels who've been arbitrarily detained and push for transparency around the processes by which these trials are ongoing. Je pense que
I think that one of the challenges is that if there's no transparency in this process, it's difficult to judge how it's unfolding. But I will say that Canada is a country that respects the values and principles of openness and transparency and the principles of justice. We will continue to follow this case and to call on the government of China to release those two Canadians and send them home.
Up here, do you trust that the Biden administration is able to provide enough support and can help solve the situation with the Michaels? And what kind of pressure are you putting on China? Have you explicitly phoned President Biden since the trials have been announced?
We continue to work very closely with all our allies around the world who are equally concerned with the arbitrary detention and the coercive diplomacy that China is engaged in. We will continue to work very closely with all our allies, including the United States, on trying to resolve this situation.
Oui, bonjour, Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada.
Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada. Do you know if the question of the two Michaels was raised at the summit in Alaska? Answer. I know that the summit is happening now, but I'm very confident that it will be an issue that will be brought up there.
I know that that summit is currently ongoing, but I am very confident that this is an issue that will be raised at that summit.
Thank you, and that concludes today's press conference.
Merci tout le monde.
Thank you. The conference is now ended. Please disconnect your lines at this time, and we thank you.